Hi, welcome everybody. We're going to talk here about the markets for the factors production, chapter 18. So this is the book of Gregory Mankiw, Principles of Economics, 7th edition. So basically, when we will discuss about the factors production, we will emphasize first in labor. So when we talk about labor, we can determine that the price of the labor naturally is the wage, is the way that you will take as a worker or the wage that you will pay as basically as a owner of a company. So at the end of the day, the salary will be determined by the job you will take. So for example, here we have like two examples. So we have from one side a computer programmer or the gas station attendant. So the idea is like why maybe in this chapter we will understand why maybe the computer programmer he will or she will get more money compared with a person that chooses for life as a gas station attendant. So as example, we have here for the US for 2012, the income was around 15 trillion. So consider trillion as 15 plus 12 zeros. So when we try to split that income of total economy, we can split them or split it in in the factor of production. So for example, 2/3 in salaries, and then the other 1/3 will go to the owners of capital, as for example the land owners, people that own land can get this part of the money. So at the end, we will understand that those differences between the salaries between a worker at office or a gas attendant, most of the time, most accepted theory is like is highly answered by supply and demand forces. So then, when we have the demand on labor, also demand of workers, or we have the demand of land, the quantity of land we use to produce, and the quantity of capital, it means the computers of machinery necessary to produce, then you will determine the price it will be paid. It will be paid to workers, to landowners, and capital owners. Then at the end, the factor of production are inputs. Those are necessary used to produce goods and services. So then those factor of production we consider most of the time labor, but obviously it is necessary to understand the use of land and capital as well. So then, for example, when we talk about a software program, we can consider labor of the programmer's time, so the time that is spent in order to produce something. Then we have the physical space, natural, we can consider that as land. Then where offices are located, and then we can consider the office building and computer equipment as the capital. So those three factors or those three inputs are necessary to have a final good that we consider here a software program. Then at the end, when we have the demand for a factor, so the demand for labor, demand for land or capital, at the end is a derived demand. Why? Because it depends on the real demand of the final good. So then we can determine that this is kind of attached the wage that a computer program will receive. It depends on naturally the price of that software program. Then, for example, the gas attendant, it will depend again on this final product or service that he will produce. That at the end is to just pump the gas or even clean the windshield. Then those are the necessary ingredients to produce goods and services. So the demand for a computer then naturally is linked with supply of computer software. So then this is the kind of the main characteristic. So then when we analyze the factor demand, so considering how competitive, we are talking about a profit maximizing firm that at the end of the day decides how much any factor to buy, not by the factor itself, but because of the profit that this is trying to pursue. So then we will start to talk about the demand of labor, one of the most important factor of production for any company. Then we have here a normal graph for supply and demand. So here we are going to discuss about the example that we were going to talk about throughout our that chapter. So that we have here the market for apples, we have the y-axis, we have the price of apples. This is measured in dollars. Maybe it should be the baskets, or the price of one basket of apples, of 5 kilograms, any quantity determined, but this is the price. Then we have here the quantity of apple that we produce. So naturally we have the two forces that we have studied during the first chapters, and those forces determine at the end the price and the quantity of equilibrium. Okay, then when we talk about the factor of production, is what we consider as a derived demand, because it will depend on the market for Apple scheme. So then, when here we have the other graph, which is the market for apple pickers. As you realize, we have different labels for the axis. So the first difference is the y-axis, because we don't have price anymore. We have here the price of labor. So we know that the price of labor is the wage. And what about the workers? They are called our apple pickers. Those are necessary to naturally pick the apples from trees. So we have here the wage of apple pickers. This is measured. We can consider that maybe by hours, the salary by hour. Then we have the x-axis, that we don't have here the quantities of apple anymore, but we have the quantity of apple pickers, the quantity of people, and we label that usually as L, as the kind of the labor available in the market. So again, we have a supply, but at this point, the supply is offered by the people or by the apple pickers, and the demand is provided by the company. So this is kind of upside down, different from the previous situation. Then here we're going to talk about the competitive profit maximizing firm. So here, as we saw before, we have example of an apple orchard, and the idea is like each week the producer decides how many apple pickers he will hire. It's not random. It will depend on the profits it will finish at the end of production. Then the producer, he or she will pay salaries and take what is left as profit. So as total revenue, then minus the total cost, which is included the number of workers times the wage that he will pay. Then remember that we are talking here about the firm that is competitive. So then in the market for apples, where it is a seller, and market for apple pickers where it is a buyer. So it's what I tried to say before, that at that time the demand for labor is considered by the producer and the supply by the workers. Then it's a price taker. It means that we saw before that they cannot take any incidence on the price, and the price like form that we have in the market. He will take that as taken. Is a price taker, and the firm just care about profit. It doesn't care about how many workers he will hire. Is more about just profit. And remember, when we discuss about profit, keep in mind that we have the total revenue minus total cost, and we have the total revenue is basically the quantity times the price. And here, if we make a little trick, we have total cost over Q, and we multiply by Q, then they will cancel out. And at the end, when we can collect Q, we have Q times price minus the average total cost. So this is the idea of the profit. You need to maximize that gap, the price minus the average total cost. Then the idea is like we need to establish how the number of apple pickers affects the quantity of apples it can harvest and sell. So here we have the result, right, of that table, that maybe we can grasp better the idea. So here we have the labor, okay, so it means the number of workers. Here we have the output, the Q, so the quantity of apples that we will pick. Here we have the marginal product of labor. Remember, the marginal product of labor, we talk about economists, we talk usually at the margin. So we say how it changes when the other unit changes in one unit. It means at the end of the day how much is going to produce this additional worker, how much he or she will bring to production. If I hire an additional worker, how much I will get as a return. And then we have a new element here that is fundamental to analyze the core idea. So we have the value of the marginal product of labor. So it will take the marginal product of labor times the price. So this is going to finish the total value of that additional worker, not measured in quantity but measured in dollars, in money. And then we have the wage, which is the cost of the labor, and then we have the marginal profit. So this is essential because it will determine how much is going to be the point that I'm going to stop hiring people, because automatically when this additional worker this produce the value of that marginal product, it will be less than I need to pay. Naturally I need to stop that, because it won't be profitable if I hire an additional apple picker, but I need to pay more for that than he or she really produces. So this will determine at the end what will the most efficient point or the most profitable point from the producer side. So here we have the labor. This is measured in workers from 0 to 5 workers. Then we have the output, which is measured in bushels. So here we have naturally 0 workers. They produce 0 because, well, I guess that is more than obvious. And here we have the production. One worker, it will take or it will bring 100. Then 2 will get 180, one third 240, and fourth 280, and then the fifth worker 300. You realize that the change or the jump from the 1 to 2 is larger than the second to the third, and so on and so forth. So this is the trick of that, is what we called in economics the diminishing return of labor. So an additional worker, if we keep all the staff constant as ladders, for example, that they need to climb to pick the apples, obviously we have the same quantity of ladders. From the more people, they will be less efficient. So this is the trick of the diminishing marginal product of labor. Then we have here the marginal product, which is the change when I increase one additional worker. Then the denominator is just 1, and the quantity is we have here the subtract of 180 minus 100, 240 minus 180, so then so on and so forth. And the value, we assume here that the price of a 1 bushel is $10. Then we just multiply them and we have 100 times 10, 80 times 10, 60 times 10. And why is so important that, as I said before? Because this is at the end the money that I will receive when I hire an additional worker. And then the wage is important because it's the other side of the coin, that we have the wage that I need to pay in order to to hire that worker. Then this is the most important, the result, the profit that I really care. Why? Because here I get $500 of benefit of that guy that I hire. This is just one guy. When I hire the second one, I will get from that guy $300. Is it still profitable? Let's see what happens if I hire another one. So if I hire another one, the third one, I will get 100 from that guy. So then when I get the other one, it will turn to negative. So I will stop here. So automatically you understand that you will hire until the third guy, because this will bring just the maximum profit. Okay. Then the idea is like the first two columns represent the production function. Why? Because we have an input, which is a labor, and the output, which is the quantity. Then, and remember that we keep the other inputs fixed, as for example capital or land, and we just move L in order to understand better. Is what we talk and in economics ceteris paribus. Everything is constant, and we just move the variable that I need to keep an eye on. So here we have the labor and output, and here's what we talk the production function, the relation of the output with the relation of the inputs. Here is naturally 2D graph because we don't have more elements. So here is what we have here. We have the quantity of apples measured in bushels here, and here we just match them. So for example, one worker, it will bring 100, two will bring 180, and so on and so forth. So here we understand how the slope will get like kind of flatter, right? So it get flatter, so it's kind of the slope is what we can call the marginal product of labor. So when it's going to be zero is when this additional worker, it will bring no more than the previous one. So when we have zero is because for example, I increase the apple picker from 5 to 6, and the production will not change. So this is what we talk a marginal product labor equal to zero. Okay, so this is the form of that, and actually this slope, this decreasing slope, is what we call again diminishing product of labor. Then as naturally as the number of workers increases, the marginal product of labor declines, as we saw before. Then is what we talk, as we said before, diminishing marginal product. Then when few workers are hired, they can pick the low hanging fruit. This is kind of example to understand or grasp a little better the idea. So as the number of increases, additional workers, they have to climb higher up the ladders to find apples to pick. Then the production function naturally becomes flatter. So here we have the third one, which is the marginal product of labor. This is decreasing, as we saw before, and we understand here by numbers and by the slope of the production function. Then the idea is like the firm is interested not in apples, but in the profit it can make. So they consider the profit of each workers will bring in, and the idea is we need to find the total income that these apple pickers will take at the end of the day, multiply by the price of that good, which is the apple. So for example, if a bushel of apples sells for $10, an additional worker produces 80 bushels of apples, then at the end this worker produces or brings to me $800 of revenue. Then the market price is constant because we're talking is they are price taker due to this is a competitive firm. Then here the table as we saw and analyzed before, and we see how this product fall until the third worker that we discovered before, and this is the optimal condition. You get it? Where we have the value of the marginal product of labor is exactly equal to the wage. This revenue, like marginal revenue, is exactly equal to the marginal cost is that we saw before in the previous chapters, but here we convert that with just labels in a different way, and we have here the value of the marginal product of labor. Then here we have this new graph that we have here still the quantity of apple pickers, and here we have the value of the marginal product. Then at the end we discover that this is like the demand curve for labor. Why? because when we hire more and more and more and more apple pickers, the value of the marginal product will be less, will be lower. And then the opposite, when we have smaller or a small quantity of apple pickers, we have a higher value of marginal product. So then this is like the main difference. And here is the market wage, then, which is the cost, okay, because it's constant. I cannot move that price. We are price takers. And then the profit maximizing quantity is naturally when this value of the marginal product or the demand curve for labor is exactly equal to the marginal wage. Then the maximum benefit when both curves cross, and then the value of marginal product is the same labor demand curve. Then what causes the labor demand curve to shift? The first is the output price. Why? Because this is the value marginal price value of the marginal price product of labor. Sorry, so here we have is equal to the price times the marginal product of labor, and then anytime we have the change of the price, this curve will move. If the price of the apples is higher, naturally I will have more incentives to produce more, and the demand will for labors shift to the right. If it's other the case that the price is lower, naturally I will hire less workers and the demand for labors will decrease. Then another part, we have a technological change. Maybe it could be the case that most of the times we talk about labor augmenting. It means that is when we discover a better way of doing things, then we have that. Then we have at the end of the day that this demand curve will move to the right, right? Because they are more efficient. This value of the marginal product of labor increases. But when we talk about labor savings, then technological change will determine that human being is being replaced, as for example in Europe that we don't have more cashier people, then this demand for cashier will shift to the left, and naturally the wage will be lower because this is not more needed. Okay, so here we have the market wage and here we have the value of the marginal product of labor, and if this increases it will go shift to the right, and if it decreases it will move to the left. Okay, then we have the other that supply of other factors, for example some that are inputs. Naturally it will depend on the demand for labor. So for example, when we have like the land is definitely like cost more, then I will hire less people. So then this will shift to the left. Then we have here an important fact that we will face different times, and this is the trade-off between work and leisure. Because remember about the first video that we discussed here about the one of the 10 principles is that people face trade-off. Okay, this is one of the trade-off. In the meantime that I'm working this video, I'm wasting the time that I can spend playing video games, for example, or maybe performing another activity. So this is the trade-off between leisure and work, and this lies behind this labor supply curve, right? Because all the time that maybe some work is really attractive, the supply curve will be high, but maybe when something is not really attractive, the supply curve will be maybe really low. So then the price of 1 hour of wage is at the end of the day the opportunity cost of leisure time. Then at this time we just assume the higher wage, you have the higher incentives to work, right? For example, if I receive more money for that videos, obviously I will try to make a lot of videos. But because not the case, I'm just like uploading just one each 2 months or something like that. But I will try more a little bit. And then here another example that maybe can cause the labor supply curve to shift is the changes in tastes. So some cultural is about women, because women they didn't used to work before, but due to the the changes of the roles in the family where female, when women they need to work, they start to work more, right? So then we have like here the changes in alternative opportunities, so maybe another attractive opportunity. So that is like changes that may change the demand curve. So for example, if women they go to the market labor, definitely this curve will shift to the right. Then we have another important fact here that we discuss about immigration. So naturally, we will have here that the this will this will change the supply curve as well. That when it increases, it will go to the right, and if the decreases, go to the left. So this is naturally what we can see, or the kind of the threatening that European countries would say, or even US, if for example more Latin American people they go there, the supply curve will go to the right and the wages will go down. Well, this doesn't work immediately, but this is part of the important of the concern, at least. So then, when we can start to discuss about the equilibrium in the labor market. So then, the wage, the price, adjusts to balance the supply and demand for labor. So then, this is remember that the wage is equals to the value of the marginal product of labor. This is the condition of maximizing for the producer. Here we have again. So this is the condition, the equilibrium wage, when the supply and demand are exactly the same. So here we have like examples that we discussed before. So here we have the wage and the quantity of labor. This is the L1, W1. Those are the equilibrium characteristic of this market. And then when we have an increase of the labor supply, so imagine more women they are in the market, or we have more immigration on an immigration wave, then naturally the result will be a reduction in wages and raises employment, right? So then the marginal product of labor decreases and W goes down. Then here's what we talked before, change in taste. So there is a link between the changes in demand and the welfare of producers and workers, naturally, because the industries that they have like the prices are higher, or for example oil prices, when they experience higher prices, the workers inside that industry they will earn more money. But remember, this market is so volatile. So then when it changes the prices, then it goes down. The workers they are less, or they are worse off. So here is that a case. Here we have, for example, the other side, shifts in labor demand. So for example, here the price of this industry goes down, the oil, for example, then the demands goes down, and naturally the wage and the quantity of people will decrease. But if it's other the case that we start from W1, then it increases the employment, and the W, the wage, will increase, and then the quantity as well of workers. Then just to have a discussion about here, like kind of important fact, is about the case of monopsony. It's like kind of the same case of monopoly, just is presenting the supply force. Then this should be a firm that is just hiring people in one little town. So this is the case of monopsony, when we have one buyer. So here in this labor example should be a company that would hire the total labor force in a town. Okay, this is the case of monopsony. Then we will just discuss a little bit about the other factors of production, because we already discussed about labor, but it will like put the basis in order to understand the other factors. Then we automatically know that not only labor is necessary, but also other factors, as for example land and capital. So in our example of apple pickers, remember that we need another important fact. Not only apple pickers, but we need like ladders that they need to climb, and the size of the apple of orchard where they will work. Then the capital, we automatically understand labor and land without any problem, but capital is kind of more superficial, and the capital is like as the stock of equipment that is necessary to produce, like building plants, machinery, or that part, like for example ladders. Then we will understand the equilibrium in the markets for land and capital. So then we will find out about the profits of owners of land and capital. We have to establish two differences, because when we talk about the price of land or the price of capital, we can understand that as the purchase price, that you can take that indefinitely, and then we have the rental, that this you can use, you can the disposal of that for just limited period of time. And then for example the wage is the rental price of labor. Okay, so then here we have the market of land. We have naturally y-axis the price, which is the rental price of land, and the quantity of land. Here's demand, supply. You understand, or you'll see a little bit, this is really pretty much inelastic. Remember, it cannot adjust easily the price, and this is naturally because we cannot increase really easy the quantity of land. So this is why, because this is inelastic. And then here we have the other part, which is the market of capital. We have here in the y-axis the rental price of capital and the quantity of capital, and here we have normal curves, the supply and demand, and this is determine the price and quantities of equilibrium of that market. Then recalling that we have that the value marginal of product of labor, it should be exactly the same of the wage, and we have that the value marginal product of labor is exactly equal to the price times the marginal product of labor equal to W, and then we have the price is equal for the other factor, the marginal product of land equal to the price of land, and then we have here the price times the marginal product of capital equal to the R, which is the price of the capital. So this relationship that we have behind, or from the very beginning, we can just like take to the other factors, because at the end of the day we need to find that each factor should be profitable. And how we can find that it should be profitable or not, it should be exactly that what I'm bringing in, because I'm using that factor, I'm taking exactly the cost. Okay, I'm taking like kind of a gap, which is the benefit, but the marginal, the last one that I'm going to take, this should be exactly the cost. I cannot take any losses. Then just like moving a little bit ahead, we will finish in some relationship that the marginal product of labor is exactly equal to real wages. So wages over price. Okay, that we will understand much better a little bit ahead, but this is the end, that we have that the marginal product of each labor is exactly equal to the real price of that factor. Then the marginal product will depend on the quantity available of that factor. Then naturally we have factor abundant in supply, the price is low, and the low is the low marginal product. This is complete natural as an any good. When we have like abundant supply, the price is low, but when something is a scarce factor, they have productivity and high price. Because we have like interrelation between all these factors, just a movement of one factor will affect the other factors as well. So for example, imagine, let's bring an example about a hurricane that destroyed ladders. What happens to ladders? Because it becomes from being an abundant factor to an scarce factor. So then the price of ladders will naturally increases, and the owners of ladders that they still have ladders because they didn't or they weren't affected because of the hurricane, they can earn more. And then less workers are required, because due to reduction of marginal product of labor, then the wage goes down. How we can understand that? Throughout graphs. It should be much easier to understand. Here we have the ladder market, which is naturally determined by the price and the quantities. We have here the supply and demand. Then automatically the ladder, because of external effect, which is the hurricane, the supply will shift to the left. then we have here that the price will be higher naturally, and the quantity will be lower. Then what happened to the labor market? Because I'm not going to hire the same quantity of people, the producer of apple pickers will reduce to will reduce the demand for workers. So naturally, we have here that the wage of those workers will be lower and the quantity lower. So here we will have like duality. From one side, the owners of the capital will have more benefits, but the owners of labor, that they are the workers, they will have like less wage. Okay, then just as a conclusion of that incredible chapter about the very beginning of the factors of production, we know that the labor, land, and capital, they are compensated by the role they perform. So if they are getting great benefits, I will pay a lot from them. If I'm not taking too much from them, I will take um, low of that. Then this is what we call the neoclassical theory of distribution. That is like really well accepted in order to understand the total income of a country, and we can split them inside the factors of production: land, labor, and capital. And then this important fact that you need to take really into your mind, by heart, because the price of any factor depends on the value of the marginal value of that product. If this value is high, if this value is high, then you need to pay a lot for that. Then here at the end, I guess that we can understand that idea. Why a software programmer, he will take more than the other party gas attendant, or even for example a soccer player, because definitely the price that he produces is higher than a gas attendant or a waiter or a waitress. Okay, I guess that was all for today. I guess that you enjoy us all the time. This is my personal opinion. This is subtle. This is how I can understand this chapter. Do you have like any other point of view, any additional comment? I will more than happy to read and answer them if possible. So subscribe my channel, and that's all for today. Have a great day, night, and life. Bye bye.